Is that right?
I think Time Magazine wrote that one.
How do we learn to make sure we raise good human beings without messing them up when we haven't been taught how to be good parents?
So
I don't have kids, but I feel like I had a struggling childhood. And I love my parents, but I also know that they could have done some things differently. And I think there's probably a lot of us in the world who are thinking, I love and appreciate a lot about my parents, but they might have also done some messed up things. And if we can start to do our own healing journey and start to reflect that, okay, maybe they just didn't have the tools, they didn't know any better, hopefully they had the best intentions, and we can try to have some compassion for our parents as adults, then there's some more integration and healing that I think allows us for us as we grow up, right? However, how do we learn to make sure we raise good human beings without messing them up when we haven't been taught how to be good parents? And to add to that question, is it possible to raise a child that is not traumatized in some way, no matter how good we try to raise them?
I'm going to try to answer all that. You'll let me know which parts of the question I lose as we go. So what you started with just resonates with me so strongly. And I think it really is the reason I get out of bed every morning, right? Parenting is the most important job in the world. And it is the hardest job. And it's probably the job we'll have for the longest number of years, because everyone knows it's more than 18 years, right? So, and someone said to me, I'll never forget, it's the only job you care about on your deathbed, which I was like, okay, that's heavy. But I think I wouldn't know yet, hopefully, but I think that's true. And it's also the only job that falls under very difficult, very impactful, very ongoing, that we literally get no training for, right? And if my friend was a surgeon and called me and said, I'm not doing surgery, right? And I'm messing everything up and kind of messed up this person forever and I'm so bad. And then I started poking around and it turned out she never went to med school or never went to residency. I'm pretty sure I would say to her, hey, this is not that you're a bad surgeon. That's not what this is. You weren't adequately prepared and it's probably time to invest in resources. And I just want to say too, because I think it's important that if she said, don't worry, I got all my tips on Instagram, I'd say, okay. I mean, you might want to do a little more in depth than that. I think you deserve a little better, than that. And yet this is what parents are set up for. When I've asked parents the number one reason why they don't get the support they even think they need, the number one reason I get, the number one reason I hear is I should be able to do this on my own.
It's like a shame underneath.
Yeah, and there's a shame, and I think there's a really strong societal message. As a woman, I can say the maternal instinct is a real thing that people think we should have, which really is a way of saying parenting has kind of traditionally been a woman's job. I think they're shifting around that. It's great. And it should just be something women have an instinct to do, which is a really great setup for any parent when they're struggling to say, I guess it's me. And I think when we're struggling with anything, we have two paths. And this is where I think we'll be talking about parenting, but you don't have kids. I'm sure some of your listeners don't have kids. This is in some ways about kids, in some ways 0% about kids and parenting. When we're struggling, we can either say, what is wrong with me and it's my fault? Or when we're struggling, we could say, what resources and support do I need? And they're two completely different paths. One is activating and has hope and has a likelihood of change, and one is actually spiraling into an abyss and a freeze state, right, of shame, which makes it impossible to change.
Yeah.
And I think parents have typically said to themselves, what's wrong with me?
Wow.
This should be easier. You kind of also see on Instagram, it looks like everyone else got their kid to smile for a holiday card, and you're like, that's not what happened to my kids, and you feel like it's your fault, and then you don't talk about it, and then you fake good, and then the next person's like, well, that person seems to be having a hard time, and then honestly, we feel small. We don't get those resources, we don't feel empowered, and kind of happens generation after generation until this is not supposed to be depressing. This is so hopeful. What we see at Good Inside, and we hear all the time from our members is, I came here for my kid. That is not why I'm here now. I now asked for a raise. I now can stand up to my partner when they're mad at me. I now know that it's okay for me to go away for a weekend with my college friends, even when my partner and my kids are upset. Like, that's their feelings. Like, I can have empathy and I can still do the things I need to do for myself. And in that way, I feel like what we're talking about is a lot of stuff you talk about is actually just, I call it sturdy leadership. And what's interesting to me is I feel like we have a lot of models for sturdy leadership in the workplace. Like, there's a lot of thoughts now, like you can't really just yell at people and expect them to get better at work. And I even think that's like been modernized on the sports field. Like, the best coaches like kind of know you got to connect before you correct. And what's kind of amazing and sad, and yet we're there, I think, hopefully now, is like parenting young kids is kind of the last place to modernize, where sturdy leadership kind of gets applied and what it really looks like and how it benefits everyone. But that's really what good inside is.
You know, it's interesting because I don't think I've ever heard that connect before you correct. And I just had a flashback to all the coaches that used to scream at me when I would drop a football or miss a basketball shot or just mess something up, or I wasn't paying attention or whatever happened, and just screaming at me, belittling me, you know, making me feel less than in front of my peers, my teammates, and shaming me to try to get better. And I remember just feeling like resentful and angry all the time, right? And afraid. Now, I would still work hard, but I didn't come from an emotionally good place. So I didn't want that to happen again out of fear of shame, as opposed to someone actually sitting down and connecting with me, where I did have great coaches also who took the time to connect with me and ask me questions. And why are you so angry? Why are you reacting like this? What's going on? Why are you so frustrated? Why did you foul that person that way?
Yes.
Like, you know, what is going on?
I use sports analogies all the time, and connect before you correct. There's a lot of phrases I'll take credit for. That one's not mine. I actually can I don't know who said it first, but it's beautiful, and it gives you an order of operations, right? Where I think about this all the time, like my kid is hitting their brother, or my kid lied to my face about something that, you know, is important. Like, I don't know, whether they studied for a test, whatever the behavior is, right? And I find out and I see them hitting, and I just kind of send them to their room, or I like take away their iPad or something, which I always say is like the worst thing. Because when you're a parent, you realize like, now I have to deal with taking away their iPad. I don't even want to do that. I like when they have iPad time.
Right.
Nobody wins. Like, why did I do that? You know? But I think about a basketball coach, and I think about a kid who is missing layups all the time. And I think about watching my kid's basketball coach, if that's my kid. Yeah. And the coach is like, you go to your room and you come back here when you can make a layup. And I feel like all the parents would be like, why? Like, why would that even, what's the theory of why that would be effective? Forget, like, you think my kid is now going to their room and Googling how to make a better shot? Like, yes, you might have to pull the kid out of the game, but you probably want to say, hey, like, this is not your game right now. I believe in you. And like, we're going to get in the gym tomorrow and get to the bottom of this and figure this out. And if that was my kid's coach, I just don't know if the parents would say, that coach is really condoning bad behavior. They're really encouraging. That coach is making it seem like it's okay to miss layups. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but we actually have a system of doing that to our kids over and over. And then we wonder why so many teens and adults feel so awful about themselves. Well, when you reflect back to a kid that they're a bad kid during the stage they're forming their identity, that will stick with them for a while.
And it's hard for them to kind of unwire that, I guess, right? And believe that they're actually good.
And totally possible. Like, to me, if like there's one thing I ever want someone to take from anything I say, is it's never too late. It is never too late. Repair is amazing. It is never too late. The parent who's listening now is like, oh no, I guess I messed up my kid forever. You did not. By the way, I sometimes say bad things to my kids too. We're human. But to me, it's the starting point of, right, like my kid is good inside. That's why like everything we do is called that. And to me, that idea isn't just like a phrase that sounds nice. To me, it's actually a core principle that is very different from a punishment or fear-based approach, which is, if I believe my kid is good inside, and I always find visuals helpful, so I look at one hand, I'm like, this is my kid, this is who they are, that's their identity, and they are good inside. And then I look at my other hand very far away and say, like, this is their behavior. This is what they did. And I would agree with a lot of parents telling me, like, oh, they lied to your face? I would agree, like, not great behavior. They hit their sister? Definitely not great behavior. But those things are different, and it's really important with your hands to keep them separate, because you could then look at one hand and say, I have a good kid who hit their sister. And the only reason we want to punish and come down so harshly on our kids is because those hands collapse. Is because I see the bad behavior and I don't even realize it's so fast in my brain, but immediately I assume I have a bad kid.
That is my kid.
That is my kid. Wow. It's collapsed. And to me, I mean, good inside is more things, but everything else flows from the foundation of like actually separating behavior from identity, which I think you get this, but not everyone does. So it's important to